Apple Knocker Radio.
Alright, greetings friends. Today I want to discuss the Ritual Purification, Exorcism, and Defensive Magic course offered by the Institute for Hermetic Studies. I am going to pin the location for that course in the description box below this video if you care to check it out, and I recommend that you do. I thought the course was fascinating, and I was amazed at how much quality content was included for the price that I paid. I do a lot of online education. I'm basically taking courses all the time, mostly in tech, like IT and programming, and right now I'm doing some data analysis courses, but also languages, and then just literature, just things that interest me. And so I have a pretty good idea for how much content to expect when you order an online course, and this course definitely provides a lot of quality content for the price. Basically, you get a lot of bang for the buck. So I think of the course as being cut in two parts. The main part of the course is composed of a lecture that Mark Stavish, the director of the Institute for Hermetic Studies, gave some time ago. I believe it was in 2020. That lecture is broken into 5 audio files, each one roughly an hour long, so about 5 hours of lecture. And then there is a PDF accompanying that, and the PDF is a transcription of the audio lecture. That really is the main meat of the course, to my perception, how I perceived it. And obviously it's a deep dive into ritual purification, exorcism, and defensive magic. It was really fascinating to me because you don't often see the topic of exorcism approached outside of a Roman Catholic paradigm. And so that alone to me made the course worthwhile. It was very interesting to hear it spoken of as more of a general phenomenon of consciousness than as something that is specifically and solely suited for Catholic priests to deal with. And within that, within the course, there are all kinds of really interesting things. Like Stavish discusses old folk magic techniques for protecting your house against spirits or any kind of malignant influences. He discusses ways of removing bad psychic influences from one's life. A lot of these are based on Stavish's experiences with folk magic traditions, which I think are really interesting. Stavish grew up with the powwowing, which is the Pennsylvania Dutch folk magic tradition that stems from Germany, to my understanding. And so that's always really interesting to hear his perspectives on those things. And to me, it's just perhaps most interesting of all is to hear that such traditions still being practiced and taken seriously today, including by very intelligent and educated people. And that alone is an area of interest that I think people would enjoy diving into. But to be clear, the course is really made and directed towards practitioners. And so within that, there are a lot of practical uses or practical methods to accomplish these ritual purifications, exorcisms, forms of defensive magic. And so I think it's of interest to people who come at this as from a perspective of outsider curiosity, as well as people who come from it as practitioners. Though to be clear, the course is clearly pointed towards practitioners. And some of the aspects that came out in the lectures I think might be ambiguous and a little confusing to people who don't have foundational research in some of these topics. But I don't think so much so that you can't get something out of it and you can't enjoy the general gist of things. But it is clearly directed towards people who already have some familiarity in these topics and are practicing in them. And so I said the course was cut into 2 parts. The second part is a collection of various essays. Obviously, they're on these topics of ritual purification, exorcism, and defensive magic. But they are separate from that core lecture, which I think of it as you have the core lecture with the audio files and the attendant PDF. And then you have these associated essays. Now, I have nothing positive. I have nothing but positive feelings for the course, and like I said, I recommend it. The one thing for me that I had to find a little bit of a workaround is that I don't like reading on screens for very long. I can really only read for maybe 10 minutes, get quality reading in. If I really want to drill into something and focus on it, I just need it to be in print. I need it to be on paper. But there's an easy way around that. All I did was I copied the essays, pasted them into a Word file, did some formatting, printed them up on my printer, and I read them off of there. As for the PDF, that technique is more difficult with the PDF, but you can buy the PDF as a book. I think it was only $8 on Amazon when I looked, and I do intend to buy the book, absolutely. The book that is the transcribed version of the lectures. And so that was the one thing for me. I don't want to say it's a negative, because I think the reason why the course is so cheap and so low cost, right? You're supposed to avoid the word cheap. But the reason why the course doesn't cost a lot of money is probably because a lot the materials are electronic. And so you would have to raise the cost if you were to distribute printed materials. So I don't really think of it as a negative so much as I just had to find a workaround for it, because like I said, I can't really read very well on screens for extended periods of time. But those studies or essays are well worth printing out. The three that I noted and that I wanted to discuss: number one, the Crossroads at Midnight, Paranormal Research and Tradition. I really feel that essay alone, I may have felt like I had gotten my bang for the buck if it had just been that essay. It's not a long essay, but it's just a great essay. It's an excellent essay because it comes at the topics of paranormal research from what I consider a more serious perspective than I normally see online, especially today when you have people just getting together in teams and going out and ghost hunting and stuff like that. This isn't meant as a criticism, nor is it meant as a judgment. I'm just saying that a lot of these, I almost feel like a lot of people today come at these topics from almost like a materialistic perspective, which is kind of interesting because they're ghost hunting and like Bigfoot hunting and stuff. But what I mean by a materialist perspective is I don't feel like people are asking the questions like, what do these things apply about the fundamental nature of reality and of consciousness? Because that matters, right? That matters to how we approach these topics, right? You have to start with your a priori assumptions. You have to start with the foundation and build yourself up. And I feel like a lot of people today don't do that. And the Crossroads at Midnight discusses that in addition to other things. It talks about how the paranormal is being presented in popular media and the kind of the frivolous way that it's being presented and the dangers of that frivolous presentation. The essay discusses very practical things, such as choosing the company that you keep while you go into these explorations of the paranormal, which I thought was really interesting because in any other field or any other aspect of life, people who take life seriously and are trying to live well and healthy and happy, being selective about the company that you keep is one of the first skills that you need to learn and one of the things that you need to stay mindful of, right? When you allow toxic influences into your life, you can derail everything. But people don't tend to go into these paranormal explorations with those thoughts in mind. Probably largely because just finding anybody who would seriously commit to actually exploring these things with you, it's a smaller subset of society, and so it's probably a little harder to be selective. And yet Stavish makes the case that that doesn't change the fact that it is still crucially important to be mindful of the company that you keep. The reason being that you're going into potentially dangerous areas in the sense that we don't know the relationship between our consciousness and the very pursuit of these things, much less the actual encountering with these things, right? it's potentially a very dangerous area. And Stavish also makes that case, pointing to research by the great John Keel, where Keel discussed, a lot of this stuff, people go into these things thinking it's all fun and games. They wind up committing suicide. They wind up going insane. They wind up just terrible things happening to them. And so it's not really something that should be messed with or taken lightly. And so thinking about the company that you keep, it's important. Maybe the most important, or maybe the most interesting thing about the essay for me, though, was that Stavish goes into a deep dive about the relationship between paranormal research, the presentation of the paranormal, as well as the presentation of the esoteric and the occult in popular media. The implications of that, the ramifications of that, the sometimes suspicious nature of those things, and aspects of that relationship that people maybe don't consider as seriously as they should. These things, the media acts like it's like a brain virus creator, you know what I mean? It's pumping things out there for all kinds of minds, and it's directing people's thoughts in certain ways. And this doesn't have to be like malignant or nefarious, but that is the fact. I mean, that's the whole point of the media. You're blasting out ideas, and we're all suggestible creatures. Every person is suggestible. Some people are more suggestible than others. There's huge portions of the human race that are basically nothing but walking bags of suggestibility. And so Stavish explores what it means for media to be presenting these topics in a certain way. I'm not going to go into the conclusions because, number one, I don't want to spoil it. Number two, it's too nuanced for me to try to just throw out there right now. It needs to be read in the structured manner in which it's written. And also, number three, I'm not trying to spam from there. I'm not trying to poach from this course. I'm trying to encourage people to go check it out. And so I thought that essay was very worthwhile. And then there are two more essays that maybe weren't as deep as The Crossroads at Midnight, but were just dang entertaining. And that is A Strange Little Exorcism and An Unexpected Exorcism. Both of these are, at least supposedly to the author's account, real experiences with conducting exorcisms in a very pedestrian environment. Those are just plain interesting. And that's what I meant earlier when I said the course is the course is clearly directed to practitioners of these things. But even people who are coming at it from more of an outsider observer perspective, there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here, including these two essays about these exorcisms. To me, they were just plain fascinating and entertaining in the way that fascinating things are entertaining. So on all of those levels, I thought the course was more than worthwhile. I have these materials printed out now that I can return to. I plan on listening to the whole, actually starting today, I'm going to listen to the whole series of lectures over again. Obviously in piecemeal as I go walking or as I'm working in the yard and stuff like that. But I would want to do the whole course all over again, or listen to the whole course all over again. So it's definitely worth your while, or in my opinion, it's worth your while. And I recommend going to check it out. You could also, if you wanted to get like a little bit of a taste for it, you could order that book online. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was $7.95. It's very low cost. And with that book, you would have the core lecture from the course, and then you could decide if you want to spend the extra money to get the course, which you'll then have audio versions of the book, but you'll also get all these other essays that are packed into it. And it's a lot of essays. I think it was 10. And when I say essays, I mean various forms of writing. They're not just all essays. But you get, I think there's like 10 PDFs in there. So like I said, there's a lot of content in that course. And if you go to the URL that I'm going to pin below this, and you go there, you can see the material that's in there and judge for yourself. So that's about it. I very much enjoyed the course, thought it was very much worthwhile, and I definitely recommend that people go check it out. All right, peace out, my friends.